Creek Week.
Creek Week. Welcome to the Creek This Week, which is a video production of Allen Creek Community Church, where we exist to lead spiritual but not religious people into full devotion to Jesus. And part of that is helping folks in the current mental environment. There is a ton of mental health issues.
Environment.
The current mental environment.
Is it metal or mental?
It's interesting. I want to interview you guys because you're going to be my experts today on mental health. Because you guys know what it's like to not be mentally healthy.
This is true.
Woo!
Solid.
No, anyhow,
move.
you're going to see very quickly why my panel of pastoral experts are experts today. There's an article I went to. I want to get these guys to comment on it. Why the mental health of girls sank first and fastest. Isn't that a provocative title? And again, we're all aware of the mental health crisis, increasing amounts of depression, suicidality, but it's not being experienced evenly is the point of this article. And one of the reasons they think is because we're doing things in the opposite direction of what's working, what's been proven to work for
generations.
restoring mental health. So one of the things they talk about is cognitive behavioral therapy. And that's a fancy idea. It's summarized in a 3-letter acronym, CBT. So here's what it is.
Not
It's
to
the
be
idea is-
confused with CBD, different things.
Okay, very good. Very good. So in CBT, you learn to recognize when your ruminations and automatic thinking patterns exemplify one or more of about a dozen cognitive distortions. And then they give 4 examples. Catastrophizing, making everything catastrophic. Black and white thinking, fortune telling, or emotional reasoning. Thinking in these ways, they say, causes depression. Breaking out of these painful distortions is a cure for depression. So talk about this. Flesh this out a little bit for me, Dan. What is your experience with the definition of and the importance of CBT?
Well, it's a therapeutic methodology that it's really quite fascinating because it's almost intuitive, and it's represented in its simplest framework as recognizing kind of the process of why we end up doing the things we do.
It's true.
Whether they're adaptive and healthy things,
Yeah.
or whether they're maladaptive and unhealthy. And it's easy to kind of remember the process. It's ABC, and A is an activating event.
Okay.
So something happens. Somebody honks their horn at you and gives you the finger in traffic. That's an activating event. The B is then that triggers a belief. And so that will activate.
That guy hates me, or
Everybody's mean,
everyone's out to get me.
or I'm the worst driver in the world, or any number of beliefs that it can generate. And then there are consequences. That's the C.
Okay.
So those consequences can be, I flip him back off again.
Great.
I ram him with my car. I pull a gun out of my glove box and open fire.
Not that you've ever done that.
No, but it's kind of funny if it wasn't happening in
Yes,
America,
right. Yes.
So these would be the consequences, and then
Okay.
there, of course, then that begins another cycle. So this
Yeah.
guy getting shot at, that's an activating event.
Yes, right.
So on and so forth. So the cognitive behavioral therapy is, and by the way, that doesn't have to happen in that sequence.
Oh, okay.
Sometimes you can be just cognating on a belief, or ruminating on
Like
a
they're
belief.
talking about ruminating. yeah.
Right. It's like I hate myself. I'm the worst person in the world and nobody loves me. And that can then create a consequence.
Yeah.
Right. So then you make a choice. Maybe that's there's suicidality and you make an attempt. And then that instantly becomes an activating event.
Yes.
Or it could go from B to A to C, I imagine, as well, right?
Yes.
From a belief to then an activating a trigger,
Yep.
and then that leads to a consequence.
Yeah, absolutely. So these things can happen in different sequence, and the behavioral therapy is just simply to have a helper identify those steps and then say, okay, let's identify where. Interestingly, and I think this is where it's relevant. Where's their truth?
Yeah.
Because when you're experiencing negative consequences, if you're having positive consequences, everybody loves me, I'm rolling in money.
Yeah, right.
And it's great. why would you want to stop that, right? So it's when there are negative consequences, then a helper can come along and say, well, let's look at these activating events,
Yeah.
right? Let's look at your belief system and the consequences of living those out. And then the D in ABCD is let's then debate them.
Got
Yeah.
it.
Let's look at that belief system
fascinating.
and
good.
say, maybe this is broken. Maybe you're not the worst person in the world.
So it's centering. CBT is centering behavior and positive change in the life of the mind and what's believed as
Hence-
being a really, really
It's cognitive, yes.
wonderful.
yeah.
Okay, so now Alex, you said you've actually experienced some of this.
Yeah.
You actually did some of this in
I've
your own
done some
therapy.
of this work
Yeah,
in my
yeah.
own life because I think that it's important as pastors that we realize that we can go get help. And so I had some time where I did some CBT therapy, and it was really interesting because what they do is they actually have you take an event and run it back. And so, like, for me, it would be an example that I'm a youth pastor, so maybe I got really frustrated with a kid and I yelled at a kid. That's a consequence of that kid doesn't respect me,
Yeah.
and no one thinks I'm good enough for this, and thus,
That's,
know,
that's the belief.
that's the belief. And the triggering event was that the kid was kicking a ball at the wall, not listening to me.
Yeah.
Sure,
Yeah.
let's go with that. And so I remember running this event back to my therapist, who's a Christian, and which was pretty awesome. And she was like, "And so, how effective was the yelling at the kid?" And I'm like, "Not effective at all. It did
yeah.
not work." And so that's exactly what it's about. Is it's taking a factual outside perspective
Yeah.
and saying, like, okay, the debate part. It's did this work? Did your response? What was your response? And oh, how did you get there? And I think that's really, really helpful. It's like, how did you get there? What triggered you? What belief system are you having? And what are the lies in that belief system? Because there's some lies there that aren't true, that from a Christian perspective, we can say aren't from God.
Yeah.
Like, you hate yourself? That is not from God.
Right.
God loves you. You are made in his image. And there's this beautiful thing there. So, or you don't feel respected. God adores you, respects you, loves you, cares for you. Like, it's not from him.
So that's a fascinating bridge then. So talk about the way in which scriptural wisdom just sort of dovetails with what these, sort of secular therapy is kind of finding to be true at the center of all good behavior modification. I mean, what's the connection?
Well, I think it has to do with the fact that kind of as we think, so we are.
Oh yeah, right.
And there's never been an act, whether it's life-giving and beautiful or malicious and terrible, that didn't begin with a thought. That's just how the universe works. That's how the human brain works. So there's a connection back to what we learn in Scripture, which is we largely are what we think, what we do.
good.
We were talking about Romans 12.
Yeah, which
says that you'll be renewed by the transforming of your mind.
Oh yeah.
Romans 12:2.
Right, and so it's in our cognition, it's in our thought processes that at least the beginnings
Even
of change begin.
Even the take every thought captive.
Yes,
Right.
Like
Yeah.
just keeping it captive to Christ. It's good.
and whatever is good, whatever is beautiful, whatever is righteous, think on these things.
Yes, right. And
being-
Jesus says the truth will set you free. How can
Yes.
truth set you free? Like if I take off your shackles, that'll set you free.
Yeah,
But he's actually deriving or connecting our liberty to be a different kind of person to
Cognitive shackles.
truth. Yeah.
And there's one of the most interesting studies that's still ongoing and has been ongoing for decades is based on what's called the Stockdale paradox. And this was Vietnam prisoners of war who came back from Vietnam, prisoners of war who were tortured in they call it the Hanoi Hilton. They came back with a occurrence of PTSD at a rate of 4%. These were people who experienced the worst that the Vietnamese army had to give. Regular soldiers came back with a rate of PTSD at 30%.
Wow.
The difference is the Stockdale paradox, and that's named after Admiral Stockdale, who was the commanding officer of these 300 some odd POWs, who insisted on a couple of things that they do. That they maintain communication with each other, that they remind each other their purpose there, that they're still soldiers, and they share how they were broken, because we acknowledge you're going to break under torture. It's going to happen. But here's the deal: you are a United States citizen. You're a Marine or a soldier or a sailor. This is your identity. This is the truth of who you are. All happened here. They were in worse situations than other people, but their cognition changed the outcome of their experience.
That's really good.
Astronomical. What you think, you become.
Wow.
What you
that's
think
incredible.
you become.
Well,
What you're thinking about is what you're moving towards.
Right. Well, that's pretty incredible. And I guess just to pull that all the way back, we're in a Job series. Everybody suffers, and when we're suffering, we get those are talk about a activating event, right? And that will prompt us into all, and it does with Job. Like I'm right now studying for the talk this weekend about chapter 3. He comes to the end of himself, total anxiety and just mired in pain. And how does one stay, we can just say it, how does one stay sane through this whole thing, through the worst kinds of literally torturous events? And Scripture has already laid this out for us, that God is interested in us having our minds fixed in what is true and what is right and what is beautiful and good. And it does not keep us from going through those A's, right? Those activating events.
Yeah.
But it will hold us in the secure reality of God, of God's love, of who He is, of who we are. And that's why we talk so much about identity things in Christian circles too. So, brothers and sisters, let's hang on to that. And there's great wisdom there that obviously is just dovetailing with what God's already revealed to us in His Word. So we will be people of, what will we call it? Good cognition? So we'll think good. We'll think good.
think good.
Hey, everybody, let's start thinking good.
I'm thinking good.
Now, that doesn't mean your grammar's
I think good.
Just because you think
Good
good
thinking,
doesn't
I
mean
do.
your grammar's good.
I'm
Well
just here.
thinking.
Good
just-
do,
I'm just-
well think.
I are thinking
Us.
good.
We think good
I
on
am Doug.
in head.
Continue
we
to have
good think.
good thinking
You.
Good think.
and fight the good fight.
All right, have
fight.
good diction,
Good
just
fighting.
like the youth pastor over there.
You know.
So sad.
See you next week, everybody.